That was great. Okay, Jeff. Jeff needs no introduction. We heard about him earlier, his role. So thank you, Jeff. So 10 minutes.
Okay. So did you hear the one about the scientist who came up with a novel idea of how to improve weather and climate prediction using GPS? Well, he went to his boss and who thought it was a great idea and said, well, let's discuss this with some of our colleagues and see how that goes. So they did. They aired it out, and they said, this is a great idea. We should do a demonstration of this and show that in fact it works. So they wrote a proposal and they got it funded, and it worked. The experiment was a success. And so it was such a success, they said, we should turn this into an operational system. This will be wonderful. Let's see if we can't write a proposal and get that funded. So they did. They wrote a proposal and they started shopping it around the various U.S. agencies, and some of them liked it and some of them didn't, but they didn't have it in their budgets. And, it was come back again next year. Maybe we'll see what we can do. And but as you've seen today, through the relationships that Bill Kuo, Bob Serafin, and Rick Anthus had with Taiwan, they found a sponsor who was enthusiastic about this program, and so enthusiastic that they decided that they would put up 80% of the funding. Everybody was thrilled. This is the greatest news. We're going to get this program off the ground, and it's going to, revolutionize everything. So they were so happy. They said, all right, now let's get the lawyers involved. What? No, that might not be such a good idea. But to transfer funds and get the program funded, you have to have a contract. And the contract has to be drafted by lawyers. So the folks in Taiwan at NSPO, they contacted their lawyer who drafted a contract, sent it to Rick. He sent it to me and said, here, read this and let me know if I should sign it. So I read the contract and I told Rick, I said, well, Rick, if you've got an extra $50 million in your reserve, then go ahead and sign it. But of course, he didn't have $50 million in the reserve, and there was no way we were going to sign that contract. So we were on a big learning curve. As you've seen today, INCAR and UCAR had done science programs with Taiwan, but in those programs, everybody paid their own way. There was no transfer of funds. Taiwan wasn't buying anything from us. And now we were in the position that we were a contractor working for the Taiwanese government. So from their perspective, we were a contractor, and according to their procurement laws, we were subject to a 100% repayment guarantee if the mission was unsuccessful. Not only that, but if there were delays during the period of performance, we were being charged liquidated damages for every day of delay. So we just stood back and we said, we can't do that. And so we rejected that. We went to Taiwan, met with them, tried to explain to them that we were a nonprofit corporation. We didn't have big reserves. We're not making a profit on this. This is a science collaboration. But in all fairness to the NSPO lawyer, she saw this as a procurement. They were buying a satellite mission. They were buying services. And according to their laws, that was the way it had to be. So we were on a big learning curve, and we found out that back in 1979, the US government decided that it was no longer going to recognize Taiwan as an independent country. And so as a result, the two countries could not have embassies on each other's soil. So what the government decided to do was create two quasi-governmental agencies, one called the American Institute in Taiwan, and the other one called the tech what? Taipei Economic Cultural Representative Office in Taiwan. Yeah. So so these entities served as quasi state departments. They issued visas, and they also served as the facilitators for work being done between U.S. agencies and Taiwan agencies. So we thought, okay, if we can get NSF to be the U.S. government agency and NSPO can be the Taiwan agency, then we can use those two entities and it'll solve all those problems. We won't be a commercial contractor. So we approached AIT and TECRO and they said, sure. However, NSF said, you know, we're not in the business of commercial operational systems. And so we don't want to be the AIT TECRO representative. They were willing to allow UCAR to be NSF's representative, and NSPO was going to be the National Science Council's representative. And so we started working on that, but it had to go to the State Department for approval because something like that had never happened before. It was always between the two government agencies, but not representatives of those agencies. But we couldn't wait. We were in a position where we had a program office. There were people working. As you've heard today, it was always, you know, a week or a month away from dying or from succeeding. And so we decided that we would enter into interim agreements with Taiwan. So we entered into the first one, and Bill Kuo and I sat down with them and we worked out the terms of that. And they had some of those what we call punitive clauses in those agreements, but the dollar amounts were relatively small, and we were able to negotiate down what we thought were reasonable risks. So we entered into a phase 1 planning agreement and then a phase 2 agreement. And then we started negotiating the long-term 5-year agreement that would include everything. And then we were notified that Orbital Sciences said we were infringing on their patents, and they wanted to take us to court. And we said, wait a minute, we don't think we're infringing those patents, but we got our IP lawyers, they got their IP. Did I say lawyers? Yes, that's right, more lawyers. So we got our IP lawyers, their IP lawyers. We started trying to work this out, and long story short, we decided, along with NSPO, that we would change the arrangement so that Orbital Sciences would now be responsible for mission success. They would provide the launch, and we would do the science support. So our part in this was much more within UCAR's wheelhouse, and the risks that we were taking, we still were contracting directly with NSPO. We were still under the burden of these punitive clauses with the repayment guarantees, although we reduced that amount to 50%. In fact, we reduced it further by them agreeing that it would only apply to work that was done in Taiwan. And so we were able to negotiate down those to a reasonable, acceptable level. And we entered into that agreement. We were finally the State Department finally approved the use of the AIT TECRO agreement for the launch vehicle. And so we were able to use that path, which made things much easier because now the funds were going to be transferred from TECRO to AIT and then to the Air Force. And so, okay, so that solved that problem. So there were lots of ups and downs. There were many twists and turns. I mean, more than an Agatha Christie novel. I mean, we would start, we'd stop, we'd start, we'd stop. And there's been a lot said today about luck. And there was some luck involved in some of this, but mostly it was darn hard work by a dedicated team who believed in this mission and were willing to take whatever effort, nights, weekends, the whole crew working and taking on risks that we had never taken on before because we believed that this was what needed to happen. And I was so happy to be a part of that team. And you also heard Chris McCormick talking about us singing karaoke, which is true. I think we got an award for that or something. But what you didn't know, and I was so grateful that Rick Anthes didn't put up on the screen the video of Rick and I singing Elvis Presley at a Taiwan or at a cosmic retreat. Thank you, Rick.
All right, our last speaker is Eric DeWeaver, NSF. Eric, here he is. I think you all know Eric. Many of you do. He is now the sort of the lead of the interagency working group. And thank you. Go ahead.
How do I do the slides?
The slides should come up. Do you have a slide? Did you?
Yeah, I did.